I want to tell you about the night I finally stopped being invisible to my own family, and how that moment changed everything. This is the story of how I discovered that being useful isn't the same as being loved, and what happened when I finally said no. The table was dressed in white linen and lit with flickering candles, all arranged beneath the low canopy of magnolia branches that arched over my parents' garden. It was their 40th anniversary, and everything was curated down to the antique silver and the jazz trio playing softly by the fountain. I sat near the end of the table, same as always, just close enough to refill the wine, just far enough to be forgotten. My sister Sylvie had already regaled the table with 3 stories, each one louder and more self-congratulatory than the last. Her boutique had been featured in a local lifestyle magazine. A musician had stopped by. A model wore one of her custom silk wraps on Instagram. Dad beamed. Mom nodded along, her smile stretched thin with effort. When dessert was served, some peach tart her assistant had picked up from a bakery I used to pay invoices for, Sylvie leaned forward and said it. "How does it feel?" she asked, raising her glass just high enough to make sure everyone was watching, being the most useless one here. A small ripple of laughter moved through the table like spilled champagne, quiet, sticky, and impossible to ignore. Dad's chuckle was deep and unbothered. Mom gave one of those closed-mouth smiles she uses when she doesn't want to seem complicit, but doesn't plan to object either. Sylvie's husband smirked as if he'd heard the joke before. He probably had. I didn't look down. I didn't laugh. I just folded my hands in my lap, then placed them carefully on the table. My voice didn't rise above the music, but it cut through the evening like a cello string snapping. "How does it feel?" I asked, keeping my eyes steady on Sylvie, knowing the useless one won't be paying your bills anymore? The silence was immediate. Forks froze midair. Someone coughed. Sylvie's smirk broke, faltered, disappeared. I stood up slowly. The legs of my chair scraped sharply against the stone patio. No one stopped me. No one spoke. I turned toward the garden gate, the air thick behind me. I didn't wait for them to call after me. I knew they wouldn't. I walked past the fountain, past the flickering lights and polished silver, and into the dark street beyond. My heels clicked against the bricks as I made my way home, each step steadier than the last. They didn't know it yet, but everything had already changed. I was 14 when I first heard the panic in my mother's voice behind the kitchen door. It was the first time I understood money could hum like a warning in the walls of our house. Dad had lost a major client and the mortgage was due. I had been working at Bellamy Books on weekends, shelving paperbacks and straightening display tables for $7 an hour. That night, I counted every dollar I had saved, 800 in total, and slipped the envelope onto my father's desk. He didn't say thank you. He called me reliable. The next month, Sylvie got a new convertible for her 18th birthday. A red one with a custom plate and white leather seats, the kind of car that turns heads even in Charleston's tourist traffic. She squealed when she saw it. My parents beamed. No one mentioned the envelope I'd left behind at BY17. I was taking extra shifts at a downtown cafe, covering for students who needed weekends off. I gave Dad $500 for new drafting tools when he said his old set was barely holding together. He patted my head like I was the dog, then told Mom I was a walking trust fund. At 18-19, I was offered a partial scholarship to study art history in Florence. It was the first thing I'd wanted just for myself. I remember sitting on the back steps with the acceptance letter, rereading the words until they blurred. But Sylvie was behind on tuition again, something about unpaid fees and an apartment too expensive for her part-time gallery job. Dad sat me down in his office. "Family helps family, Caddy," he said with that heavy gaze he used to close a conversation before it began. I didn't fight. I transferred the $5,000 I had saved for Italy into an account linked to Sylvie's school. She graduated a year later with honors and a portfolio my parents framed. I graduated from a local state school, balancing night classes. With 2 jobs to AT Sylvie's wedding, I paid the deposit on the reception venue. When she opened her boutique, Juniper and Silk, I co-signed the loan and never saw the paperwork again. They called me helpful, practical, steady, but never by my name, and certainly never with thanks to it. Was a Tuesday night, late enough that I'd already shut my laptop and brewed tea. I was in bed with a half-read book when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Sylvie's name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Caddy, hey," she said, voice bright like we'd just spoken that morning. "I need a favor." I didn't say anything. I just waited. "The boutique is doing great." "Really?" "It is. But there's this space next door I want to expand into. The bank's offering a line of credit, but they want a cosigner. Just $75,000. It's nothing really. You're good with numbers. Can you help me make it happen?" She said it like she was asking for a ride to the airport. I sat up. $75,000 isn't nothing, Sylvie. "Oh, come on." She laughed lightly. "You sit in that little apartment writing grant proposals all day. You've got investments. You don't even have kids or a mortgage. It's not like you're curing cancer." My throat tightened. "No," I said. There was a pause. "No, as in you won't help me?" "No, as in I won't co-sign a $75,000 loan. For someone who hasn't repaid me for anything." The lightness vanished from her voice. "You're being selfish." The word dropped like a match. I didn't argue. I ended the call. After the silence returned, I got out of bed and opened my laptop. I clicked through folders until I reached the one I named quietly, without thinking, Records. It was locked. I typed in the password, receipts, bank transfers, tax documents, tuition payments, business account top-ups, all traced back to me. I had scanned and saved every one, year after year. At the bottom was a contract, signed and notarized, dated March 2015. I stared at the final line, ownership stake, 51%. Caddy Mallory. She had cried the night she signed it, overwhelmed and desperate. The business was collapsing. I had liquidated nearly everything I had to keep her afloat. She signed without reading. I never reminded her. She didn't remember what she gave me. But I had never forgotten. The silence after my question didn't break. It buckled. I watched it fracture in their eyes one by one. Sylvie blinked rapidly, her expression contorting like she couldn't decide whether to be offended or confused. My mother's hand hovered midair, still holding her wine glass. My father cleared his throat, but the sound had no weight. No one moved. I didn't sit back down. Instead, I took one step forward, my voice quiet but clear. "You want to know how I feel?" I asked. "Let me tell you." I turned my gaze on Sylvie first. "The tuition you couldn't cover at St. Martin's. That was me. The boutique's lease when your rent check bounced during lockdown. Me again. Payroll for your staff for 3 consecutive quarters. All covered." I looked at my parents. "The down payment on your new roof, the orthodontist, the catered reception. For Sylvie's wedding. I signed every check. I filled every gap." Sylvie opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "I kept quiet because I thought that's what family did," I said. "I thought being useful was the same as being loved. I thought if I worked hard enough, gave enough, I'd earn a seat at this table." My mother looked down. My father finally spoke. "That's enough, Caddy." I shook my head. "It's not even close." I reached into my bag and placed a manila folder on the table. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Inside are documents proving I funded over $120,000 in expenses for this family since I was 16, including the contract that makes me majority owner of Juniper and Silk. Sylvie jolted upright. "You're lying." I looked at her. "You signed it. You were crying on the phone. Remember March 2015? I saved your business. You just forgot I was there." My father stood up, his jaw tight. "You're humiliating your sister in front of everyone." "No," I said, gathering my voice one final time. I'm done hiding what you chose not to see. I turned toward the gate. The candlelight behind me flickered restless. No one followed. No one called my name. By the time I reached the street, the air felt cooler, and for the first time, the wait wasn't mine. The morning after the dinner, I opened my banking app. My thumb hovered over the scheduled transfer, $2,500 withdrawn from my savings account on the 1st of every month like clockwork. It had started quietly back when Sylvie's boutique was barely covering utilities. I hadn't told her about it. She just assumed things had resolved on their own. I tapped cancel transfer. A pop-up appeared. Are you sure? I clicked yes. By the end of that week, the fallout arrived. First, it was a string of texts from Sylvie. Landlord called. Rent bounced. What's going on? Suppliers are freaking out. Are you late on something? Then the calls. Then the voicemails. Each one more frantic than the last. By Friday night, I stopped checking my phone entirely. Saturday morning, the buzzer rang. I walked to the intercom already knowing whose voice would be waiting on the other end. Caddy, Sylvie snapped. Open the door. My father's voice followed, lower but edged with command. We're not here to fight. We just need to talk. I buzzed them in. They entered like they still owned the place. Sylvie stormed past me into the living room, arms crossed. My father followed slower, his eyes scanning the space like he was looking for something to be disappointed in. You cut me off, Sylvie said. The boutique is a mess. My suppliers are threatening legal action. My landlord wants 2 months' rent immediately. You can't just. I did, I said, and I won't be restarting it. You don't get to just decide, she snapped. Not when we're this far in. I've been deciding it for years. I replied, walking calmly to the side table where I kept the folder. You just never noticed. I laid the leather-bound portfolio on the coffee table and opened it. Receipts, wire transfers, the loan agreement for the boutique, bank records, emails with her vendors. The contract with my 51% ownership. Notarized and dated. Everything. Everything you've built, I said, turning the pages slowly, has been quietly scaffolded by me. You can call me selfish, dramatic, whatever you want, but I'm done. My father leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowing at the contract. This isn't how family works, Caddy, he said. We don't keep score. No, I replied. You just don't like when the math is out loud. They didn't speak for a moment. Then Sylvie grabbed the folder, scanning the pages like she was seeing my name for the first time. Her hands trembled, but she said nothing. You wanted me to fix it? I said, folding my arms. I just did. The manila envelope arrived on a rainy morning, heavy in my mailbox, like it already knew what it carried. Inside was a lawsuit. Sylvie was suing me, claiming I had coerced her into signing over the boutique during a time of emotional vulnerability. Her attorney used phrases like undue influence and a breach of trust. I didn't panic. I called Laura, who gave me the name of a lawyer she trusted, Margot Shaw. Margot reviewed everything, my documents, the email chains, the wire transfers, the notarized contract. She didn't flinch. This isn't a lawsuit, she said, flipping the last page. It's a warning shot, and it won't land. The hearing came quickly. Sylvie showed up, polished, lips pressed tight. My father sat beside her, arms folded, jaw locked. They didn't look at me. Her lawyer painted me as controlling, calculating, said I preyed on her desperation in 2015. Claimed I used business as leverage against family. Then Margot stood. She didn't embellish. She showed them what I'd done. $60,000. Wired from my account, debt negotiated, landlord appeased, payroll saved, all documented, all signed. This wasn't exploitation, she said. It was survival. And my client made it possible. The judge looked unimpressed with the theatrics. Motion to dismiss is granted. Just like that, outside, the air was warm. Margot told me I was free. But walking to my car, I realized something quieter had ended, too. Not just the case, but the part of me that still expected them to care. After the judge's gavel fell, the silence came quickly. No one called. No one wrote. My mother didn't even send her usual vague holiday card with a photo of the garden. 4. The first time in my adult life, I was entirely unaccounted for in my family's world. I thought it might hurt more. Instead, it felt like walking into a room I didn't realize I'd been locked out of. The absence didn't ache, it clarified. With the legal mess behind me, I returned to the easel I had pulled out weeks earlier. I bought better brushes. I mixed color without rushing. It didn't matter what I painted, if landscapes, unfinished portraits. Sometimes just layers of red on top of green. It wasn't about creating something good. It was about feeling my hands do something that wasn't for anyone else. One morning, an email came from a woman I'd met years ago through a nonprofit grant. She was helping organize a regional women's leadership conference. The theme was resilience. Rebuilding without permission. She said they wanted someone who could speak to setting boundaries with grace, someone who had walked away from something that had once defined her. They wanted me, and I sat with the invitation for 2 days before responding. Then I wrote back, yes, I'll do it. And for the first time in a long time, I let my voice rise above the quiet. Damn, my birthday came on a Tuesday, quiet and unceremonious. I took the day off work, wandered the cobbled streets near the waterfront, and bought myself a slice of lemon cake from a bakery that didn't ask questions. No one called, no one from the family, at least that evening. As the sun slipped low behind the Spanish moss, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother, thinking of you. I miss my girl. 7 words. I stared at the screen for a long time, the message hovering like a hand halfway extended. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't acknowledgement. It was nostalgia maybe, or regret, or an echo of something she once meant. Years ago, that message would have undone me. I would have taken it as a sign to soften, to reopen the doors I had just started to close. But not now. I set the phone back in my pocket without replying. The wind off the harbor was warm and clean. I passed the bookstore where I'd worked as a teenager, the one that smelled like old paper and lemon polish. The lights inside glowed gently through the windows, and for a second I saw myself shelving paperbacks in the back corner, quiet, invisible. Hopeful, but she wasn't me anymore. The room was full of women, some in blazers, others in borrowed time. A soft murmur settled as I stepped behind the podium. The lights weren't harsh, but I could still feel the weight of being seen. I didn't bring notes. I just told the truth. For most of my life, I believed value came from what you could carry for other people. Their debts, their dreams, their disappointments. I became the helper, the planner, the one who showed up when everyone else looked away. I let the silence hold. But the greatest thing I ever gave, I said slowly, was finally giving myself permission to say no. I told them about the loan. The years of silent giving. The night at the dinner table when I said the one thing no one expected from me, the truth. I didn't name names. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about weight. And how good it felt to set it down. When I finished, the room was still. Then came applause, not loud, but real. A woman in the front row nodded with tears in her eyes. Another stood slowly, like she was unfolding a truth inside herself. Afterward, they came to me with stories, not about boutiques or money, but about boundaries and breaking points, about mothers, husbands, sisters, sons, about waking up. That night, I walked home under a sky wide with stars, my name tag still clipped to my blouse, paint on my fingers from the canvas I'd worked on. That morning. No more saving anyone from themselves. No more giving until I disappeared. I didn't become famous. I didn't become rich. But I became free.